masjid plays in the, what type of role the masjid plays in the life of a believer. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Al-masjidu baytu kulli taqiyyin." That masjid is a house of every muttaqi, every person with taqwa. Now, when we say that masjid is a house of every person with taqwa, that doesn't mean that the masjid is only confined to those type of people. Rather, you will have all sorts of people coming to the masjid, but the masjid will only become the homes of those who have taqwa in their lives. What does that mean? When it comes to taqwa, it is being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all time. Because that's the essence of taqwa. If building piety inside you, that a person has the conscious of Allah, he has in his mind that Allah Azza wa Jal is watching and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at my action. So a person who has the conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the masjid becomes his house. Then and only he is able to benefit from the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you look into the history, you had all sorts of people coming to the house of Allah, but guidance were only confined to those who came with pure heart and clean mind. And that's what Allah is looking at. And this should be our intention when we come to the house of Allah, or if we are involved and affiliated with anything that is connected with the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal says taqwa is something that a person, when he has it, it will save him from so many difficulties and problems in his life, and especially when it comes to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes the masjid as his house, then Allah Azza wa Jal grants him 3 gifts. The first is rahmah, mercy. Allah puts mercy in his life. He is enveloped with the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 3, وَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ. It's the tranquility, peace, and then Jannah. Right? Jannah becomes your house. When you make masjid your house, Jannah will become your house. Because masjid is a house of Allah, and whoever makes the masjid as his house, Allah Azza wa Jal grants him in return Jannah. Now, that should be the effort of every person coming to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With what mindset I'm coming to the house of Allah? This is the house of Allah, this is the masjid. How am I supposed to behave? What should be my reaction? How should I conduct myself in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And one of the things to find in the masjid is the company of righteous. Right? The tabi'un, they used to look for the company of righteous in the house of Allah. Hasan Basri rahmatullah alayhi says, whenever I enter the masjid, I make dua to Allah, Allahumma rzuqni jalisan saliha, oh Allah, give me a good companion, a righteous companion in the house of Allah. Why? Why it is important to have the right companion, the right person to talk to, if you want to talk to in the house of Allah? Because any evil that generates from the house of Allah, it becomes a disaster in the life of that person. Why? Because the place of mercy, you changed it into something else. Place of rahmah, you changed it into something else. Place of forgiveness, you brought sin inside. Right? And when a person is involved in that, then his life becomes disaster. And his life becomes very unsuccessful. Why? Because he is dealing and he is messing with the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why even to put a dirt, the Prophet ﷺ said, from the sins that people neglect is having something filthy in the masjid and it's sitting there and no one's cleaning up. That is from the sins and actions which is disliked by Allah, but people ignore them. Right? So this is something that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, something that is disturbing, something that is disgusting, something that is not right. You remove it, you take care of it, you fix it, you throw it in the trash, whatever it is, you take care of it. And if you ignore it, as long as you're ignoring it, you're getting sin. Imagine that. You see a piece of garbage and you say, okay, someone else will pick it up, and you go. And you ignore that piece of garbage, you're carrying a sin with you when you're going back to your house. This is not my words. This is the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, I was shown the sins of my ummah, and one of the sins that the ummah will not consider to be a valuable sin, it is an-nukhama fil masjid. There is something that is disgusting found in the masjid and you're not cleaning it up. So the masjid is my house. The masjid is a house of every believer, and it is the responsibility of every believer to take care of the house of Allah the way they take care of their own homes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the value of His house. We ask Allah to give us the barakah of His house. We ask Allah to protect us and His house. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to take reward by visiting His house. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu.